Hey guys, so we're going to learn how to solve equations by using substitution. So I've already taught you how to solve equations by graphing by hand. I also showed you the little shortcut by graphing in your calculator, and we did menu analyze intersection. So this entire chapter is just full of me teaching you different ways of doing the same thing. So at the end of this chapter, pretty much pick the one that you like the best and you'll be okay. All right, so this is how we solve by substitution. Step 1, I want you to solve one equation for either x or y. Once you have that done, I want you to substitute this expression into the other equation and solve for the variable. Once you have that variable solved, you're going to substitute your answer back into the equation. And then solve for the other variable. Okay, so maybe these words will make a lot more sense once we actually do an example of it. Okay, so step 1, we want to make sure we have an x or a y by itself. So either x equals or y equals. Well, they're both y equals, so that's nice. So what I'm going to do, I know that y is equal to 4x minus 1. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this 4x minus 1, and in the next equation I'm going to take out the y and replace it with 4x minus 1. So I know y is 4x minus 1. So in this next equation, I'm going to take this out and replace it with this guy. So I'm going to have 4x minus 1 is equal to 2x minus 5. So notice all the y's are gone now. The only thing that's left are my x variables, so now I can solve. I have variables on both sides, so I'm going to start by getting rid of these two x's by taking them away. What I do on one side, I do on the other. 4x minus 2x is going to leave me with 2x, and my minus 1 drops down. On the other side, that negative 5 will drop down. Next, to get rid of that minus 1, I'm going to add 1 to both sides. So my 2x drops down. I have 2x is equal to negative 5 plus 1, which is a negative 4. Last step is to divide both sides by 2, and that leaves me with x is equal to negative 2. All right, so now that I have x is equal to 2, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to one of my equations, preferably one that has the variable already solved. So it really doesn't matter which one, just some ways are easier than others. I'm going to plug back into this top equation right here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take out the x and replace it with what I know x is. So I'm going to replace it with negative 2. So I'm going to have y equals 4, and instead of x, I'm going to replace my x with negative 2. Minus 1. So I have y equals 4x minus 1. So simplify for y. 4 times negative 2 is negative 8. Negative 8 minus 1 is going to give me a negative 9. All right, so we know the solution to two equations is where they intersect. So I know that they're going to intersect at the point negative 2 comma negative 9. Remember, a point is always the x comma the y. Okay, so remember, we want to make sure we have a variable by itself. So either x equals or y equals, and I do right here. I know that y is equal to 6x. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this 6x, because y is 6x, and I'm going to replace this y with 6x. I'm going to take this guy out and replace it with 6x. So 2x plus 3y equals negative 20. So 2x plus 3, and instead of y, I'm going to replace y with 6x, equals negative 20. So now I can simplify and solve. My 2x drops down. Here I need to take 3 times 6x. That's going to give me a positive 18x. And my negative 20 on the other side drops. Next, combine my like terms. On this side, I have 2x's and I also have 18x's, so together I have 20x. My negative 20 on the other side drops. Last step is to divide both sides by 20. X drops down. X is equal to negative 20 divided by 20 is a negative 1. So now that I have my x, I'm going to go back and take out x and replace it with that negative 1. really doesn't matter which equation you use, but to make it easier, we want to use the one that's already solved for the variable. So I'm going to use this top one. So y equals 6x, but I'm going to take out the x and replace it with negative 1. So y equals 6x, so instead of x, I'm going to replace it with negative 1. Simplify. 6 times negative 1 is a negative 6. So now that I know x and I know y, I know the point at which those two lines intersect is the point negative 1, negative 6. Okay, we need to make sure we have a variable already solved for, which we do. Y is by itself, so I'm going to take this x plus 9. That's what y is equal to, so I'm going to take out the y and replace it with x plus 9. So 3x plus 8y equals negative 5. So 3x plus 8, instead of y, I replace it with x plus 9 equals negative 5. And we solve. My 3x drops down. I need to distribute my 8, so 8 times x is a positive 8x. 8 times 9 is a positive 72. And my negative 5 on the other side drops. Next, we combine like terms. I have x's here and here, so together I have 11 x's. Don't forget about your plus 72. Your negative 5 on the other side drops. To get rid of my plus 72, I take away 72 from both sides. And that leaves me with 11x is equal to a negative 77. Now I'm going to divide both sides by 11 to get x is equal to negative 77 divided by 11 is a negative 7. So now that I know what x is, I need to go back to one of my equations, take out x, and replace it with negative 7. So it really doesn't matter which equation you use, but use the one that already has the variable solved. So I'm going to use this top one. So y equals x plus 9. So y equals, well, instead of x, I'm going to replace it with negative 7. So y equals x plus 9. And simplify. Y is equal to negative 7 plus 9 is 2. So now that I have my x and my y, the point at which they intersect would be negative 7, 2. All right, awesome. I see x is by itself, so I'm going to take what x is equal to, this 4x plus 7, and I'm going to replace the x in the next equation with 4x plus 7. So I'm going to take this x out and replace it with this. So 2. Replace x with 4y plus 7. So that's 2x minus 6y equals 12. Simplify. Let's distribute. 2 times 4y is 8y. 2 times 7 is a positive 14. And I can't forget my minus 6y. 12 on the other side drops. We combine our like terms. I have 8y and a negative 6y on the same side, so 8 plus negative 6 is 2y. I can't forget about my plus 14. 12 on the other side drops. Then I take 14 away from both sides. That leaves me with 2y is equal to negative 2. And finally, I divide both sides by 2, and that's going to give me that y is equal to a negative 1. So now that I know what y is equal to, I'm going to take y out and replace it with that negative 1. I'm going to use this first equation because it already has a variable isolated. So x plus 4y plus 7. So x is equal to 4, and instead of y, I'm going to replace y with negative 1 and the plus 7. So x is equal to 4y plus 7. And let's simplify. 4 times negative 1 is a negative 4. My plus 7 drops. Negative 4 plus 7 is 3. So now that I know both x and y, I know the point at which they intersect is the point 3, negative 1. All right, awesome. We have y by itself, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to replace this y with negative 2x minus 2. So 5x plus 3, and instead of y, I replace it with negative 2x minus 2 equals negative 8. So 5x plus 3y is equal to negative 8. I want my 5x to drop, and then I'm going to distribute 3. 3 times negative 2x is a negative 6x. Then 3 times negative 2 is a negative 6. On the other side, my negative 8 drops down. We combine our like terms. I have 5x's and negative 6x's on the same side. 5 plus negative 6 is a negative 1, and those are my x's. I can't forget about that minus 6. Negative 8 on the other side drops down. Next, I add 6's to both sides. My negative 1x drops is equal to negative 8 plus 6 is a negative 2. Last, we divide both sides by a negative 1. And I'm going to get x is equal to negative 2 divided by negative 1 is a positive 2. So now that we have x, I'm going to go back. I want to use this top equation because it's already solved for y. And I'm going to take out this x and replace it with 2. So y equals negative 2x. So negative 2, instead of x, I replace it with 2, minus 2. So y equals negative 2x minus 2. Simplify. Negative 2 times 2 is a negative 4. My minus 2 drops down. Negative 4 minus 2 is a negative 6. So I know the point at which these two lines will intersect is the point 2, negative 6. Alright, so on this one I see I have y by itself down here, which means I'm going to replace this y, that y, with negative 2x plus 9. So 2x minus 3y equals negative 11. So 2x minus 3, and we're going to replace y with negative 2x plus 9, equals negative 11. So that was 2x minus 3y equals negative 11. My 2x will drop down, and I'm going to distribute that negative 3. Negative 3 times a negative 2x is a positive 6x. Negative 3 times 9 is going to give me a negative 27. Negative 11 on the other side drops. Then we combine our like terms. I have 2x's and 6x's on the same side, so I add those together to give me a total of 8x's. I can't forget about my minus 27. And negative 11 on the other side drops. Next, I add 27 to both sides. 8x drops down. Negative 11 plus 27 is 16. Finally, we divide both sides by 8 to get x is equal to 2. So now that I have what x is equal to, I'm going to take out my x and replace it with 2. So the easier equation to plug back into would be the second one, because y is already by itself. So y equals negative 2x plus 9. I'm just going to take out x and replace it with 2. So y equals negative 2x. So instead of x, I'm going to replace it with 2. So negative 2x plus 9. Simplify. Negative 2 times 2 is a negative 4. Don't forget about your plus 9. Negative 4 plus 9 is 5. So I know the point at which these two lines would intersect is the point 2, 5. Alright, so we have x equals, so we have x by itself here. So I'm going to replace this x with negative 5y plus 4. So 3x plus 15y equals negative 1. So 3, instead of x, replace it with negative 5y plus 4. So it's 3x plus 15y equals negative 1. We distribute. 3 times negative 5y is negative 15y. 3 times 4 is a positive 12. And I can't forget that plus 15y. Negative 1 on the other side will drop. We combine like terms. I have negative 15y and a positive 15y, so I add those together. Negative 15 plus 15 is 0, so we have 0 y's, so no y's, so don't write them. But I can't forget about that 12, that will drop down. And my negative 1 on the other side. So look at the statement we have written here. 12 is equal to negative 1. Well, 12 does not equal negative 1. That's false. So I can't move any further, so what does that mean our answer will be? So if you end up getting a statement that's false, what that means is your two lines are actually parallel, which means they will never intersect, so your actual answer is no solution. All right, so on this one, we have x by itself, so x is equal to 3y minus 2. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to replace this x with 3y minus 2. So 10x plus 8y equals negative 20. So 10, replace x with 3y minus 2. So that's 10x plus 8y equals negative 20. Let's solve. 10 times 3y is 30y. 10 times a negative 2 is a negative 20. And I can't forget about my plus 8y. Negative 20 on the other side drops. Then I combine my like terms. I have 30y's and 8y's on the same side, so really I have 38y's. My minus 20 drops down, and my negative 20 on the other side drops. Next I need to add 20 to both sides. So my 38y drops. On the other side, negative 20 plus 20 is 0. Next, I divide both sides by 38. So I get y is equal to 0 divided by 38 is 0. All right. So now that I have y, I'm going to take out y and replace it with 0. And I want to use this second equation because it has the variable by itself. So I'm using x is equal to 3y minus 2. But I'm going to take out y and replace it with 0. So I have x equals 3y, so take out y, replace it with 0, minus 2. X equals 3y minus 2. Okay, simplify. 3 times 0 is 0. I can't forget about that minus 2. So x is equal to 0 minus 2, which is a negative 2. So the point at which these two lines would cross would be the point negative 2, 0.